Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast, available every morning on Apple, Spotify or wherever you listen. It's Monday, the 30th of September here in London. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up today, with Hezbollah's leader now dead, US concerns grow over the impact of a possible ground invasion of Lebanon.
Chinese stocks continue to soar as the country rolls out more stimulus measures.
Plus, we have a special report on the metals renegades rocking a $15 trillion market.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
Israel has carried out its first airstrike on central Beirut in the nearly year-long conflict, according to an Associated Press reporter at the scene. It comes after Israel's military killed Hezbollah's longtime leader Hassan Nasrallah in an airstrike on the city. Israel's attacks are now fueling US concern about a possible ground invasion of Lebanon and the risk of Iran being drawn into a wider regional conflict. Here's what White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby told CNN on Sunday.
They want to get their families back to those homes and kibbutzes in the north. We want to see that too. We believe and continue to believe that an all-out war with Hezbollah, certainly with Iran, is not the way to do that.
John Kirby there referring to the thousands of Israelis who've had to abandon their homes due to Hezbollah shelling. The situation on the ground in Lebanon, meanwhile, has been described as a disaster by one local aid agency. The country's Prime Minister is warning that the number of displaced people could reach 1 million within days.
Chinese shares look poised to enter a bull market after authorities rolled out fresh property easing steps as part of a stimulus package unveiled last week. The CSI 300 index has jumped by as much as 6.5% today as traders rush to buy shares in the last session before a week-long holiday. The index had lost more than 45% of its value from the peak in 2021 to the middle of last month. Since then, it has soared by more than 20%. Goldman Sachs' China portfolio strategist Si Fu says the jury is still out on how sustainable the gains are.
So a key question is whether the rally could be sustainable. Our answer is we still need to watch for policy delivery and whether it will bring fundamental improvements from earnings from macro data. So far what we see is from the policy perspective, people are willing to see monetary and fiscal policy.
Si Fu's note of caution comes as China's factory activity contracted for a fifth month in a row in September. The data offers another reminder of the continued economic weakness in the country before Beijing's stimulus measures last week.
The focus on the world's second largest economy comes as data showed a big drop in electric cars being sold by Chinese manufacturers in Europe. Registrations fell by 48% in August from a year earlier, according to researcher Dataforce, with a broader slide in EV demand across the region adding to uncertainty for car makers. Automakers are continuing to weigh the potential impact of EU tariffs on all electric vehicles imported from China, including those from non-Chinese companies such as BMW, Stellantis and Tesla.
UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves is aiming to attend a meeting of EU finance ministers before the end of the year. According to a Financial Times report, arrangements are still under discussion, but officials see her anticipated attendance as a sign of improving UK-EU relations. A gathering of the bloc's finance ministers is planned for the 9th of December in Brussels, providing a potential date for Reeves.
To Birmingham now, where the Conservative Party conference is underway and focused on choosing a new party leader to replace former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Frontrunners Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch have clashed over Badenoch's remarks on statutory maternity pay, which she labelled excessive. She later wrote back on her comments.
Damage control mode for what? I think maternity pay is a good thing. I don't think it's excessive. I see that there is some mischief being made on social media trying to misrepresent me.
Kemi Badenoch, the former business secretary, speaking there. Her opponent, Robert Jenrick, publicly disagreed on the matter as their teams traded hostile briefings. The two other candidates, former Home Secretary James Cleverly and former Security Minister Tom Tugendhat, made clear they disagreed with her. After the conference, Tory MPs will narrow the leadership field to a final pair, with grassroots members picking a winner to be announced in November.
a capsule that's been sent to rescue 2 stranded astronauts has docked at the International Space Station. The 2 NASA astronauts have been unable to return to Earth as planned because of safety concerns. SpaceX launched a rescue mission on Saturday with 2 astronauts on board and 2 spare seats reserved for the pair. They won't be back until February, though, but Sunny Williams has told NASA that she is feeling positive.
I miss my 2 dogs. I miss my friends. But you know what? There are so many people on Earth that are sending us messages, and it makes you feel just right at home with everybody when we're able to have those conversations with our friends and family.
So astronaut Sunny Williams speaking there. Travelling in the vessel known as the Dragon capsule, the rescue mission has brought fresh supplies for the 2 who have been stuck since June. Now, in a moment, we're going to talk about the metals industry here in London. It is LME week underway, so that's going to be interesting, thinking about the commodities story after we've seen commodities surging last week. Also, we'll be talking a bit more about the Middle East. But I just wanted to say welcome back, firstly, Stephen, because you were away in New York. I did miss you. It looks like you had an absolutely amazing time in Manhattan, of course. Lots of photographs on social media of all the people you interviewed.
Yeah, look, it was a very interesting time to be there, at being Climate Week and UN General Assembly Week as well. Tom Keane on Bloomberg Surveillance asked me on Friday morning what I thought would happen next after Benjamin Netanyahu spoke at the UN General Assembly. And I mean, I told him I didn't know, and I think the weekend's events have proven that things are moving very quickly there. So let's bring you up to date on the developments that we've heard in the Middle East. In the early hours of this morning, an Israeli airstrike hit central Beirut. That's the first time that's happened in the nearly year-long conflict. Our head of Middle East and North Africa coverage, Stuart Livingston-Wallace, joins us now for more. Stuart, good morning. What are people in Lebanon waking up to this morning? It seems that Israel strikes are continuing even after the death of the Hezbollah leader.
You're absolutely right, and I don't think there's any sense that they're going to end anytime soon. So really what we've seen over the last couple of weeks is this very large escalation in terms of the airstrikes that you've seen across Lebanon. Now, primarily that's been focused on the south, to the south of Beirut and in the Bekaa Valley. Now, these are 2 strongholds of Hezbollah. So what Israel is trying to do here is 2 things. Number 1 is eliminate the leadership. And number 2 is to start degrading the weapons sites. So that could be stockpiles, that could be launch sites.
Yes, absolutely. In terms of the response, potentially from Hezbollah, if not Hezbollah, Iran, is there an expectation around that? Obviously, that was also the speculation over the weekend, the concern.
It was. And I think that at least for now, is fading. And I'm hesitant because it's very hard to predict what may happen in the days ahead. But particularly in terms of Hezbollah, we did see very limited response in the sense of, a few rockets coming over the border into Israel. But again, on a very, very low level. And what no one can quite tell is that because the Israeli airstrikes have been effective in eliminating the leadership and the weapon stockpiles, and therefore it makes it much more difficult for them to actually coordinate these attacks? Or is it that they're sort of basically having a discussion internally within Hezbollah about what will the response be? But the reality is that Israel's air defenses are so good and so advanced that it's going to be very, very difficult for them to have any impact whatsoever. I mean, I'm not quite sure what the number is, but it's sort of in the order of 95% plus of the rockets and missiles coming over get intercepted one way or another, or allowed to fall onto empty ground. So it's very difficult for Hezbollah, I think, to be particularly effective in terms of response. With regards to Iran, again, lots of noise, but not much action. And again, the reality there is that Iran's options, at least in terms of an overt confrontation with Israel, are very limited. We saw it in April. They sent over close to 300 missiles and drones, almost every single one of which was intercepted. Now, it was well telegraphed and it was clear that Iran didn't want to escalate things to a full-on confrontation. But again, what exactly are the Iranian options right now? Really hard to see.
At the same time, Stuart, away from Lebanon, we saw Israeli strikes in Yemen too over the weekend. What does that tell us about Israel's broader strategy at this moment?
Yeah, it's preemptive is the word here. So what they are effectively doing is trying to decapitate all these Iranian proxies that surround it. So we've seen that in Yemen over the weekend again, because the Houthis have been firing missiles and drones up into Israel, and particularly now that it wants to focus on the northern front, that is the front with Lebanon, the last thing it needs is some massive escalation from the Houthis. So I think that's a preemptive strike. We've seen attacks on sites, obviously in Lebanon, and Gaza continues, but also in Syria, because remember, you've got these Iranian-backed militias in Syria and in Iraq that have also been attacking Israel. So it's trying to basically do it all in one go so that it can focus on the north.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Hamas says that the head of its Lebanon branch has also been killed in a strike in southern Lebanon. How does this affect the war in Gaza? I mean, one hesitates to use the word ceasefire amidst this deepening conflict.
I think for now there is no sign that we will get anything resembling a ceasefire. And as you know, we've had lots of very powerful nations, notably the US, pushing for one for some time now, and it's not really got anywhere. I think in terms of Israel's attitude towards this, it feels that it has largely eliminated most of the threat from Hamas, at least on a large scale. But pockets continue to pop up here and there, and even in areas that have been cleared multiple times, suddenly you'll get fighting erupting again, because it is very difficult to sort of damp it down and try and keep control over it. But I think as far as Israel's concerned, it's most of the way there in Gaza. We know that it's pulled out quite a lot of troops, not least, I assume, to rest them in preparation for something that may or may not happen in the north.
Stuart, for now, thank you. Our head of Middle East and North Africa coverage, Stuart Livingston-Wallace.
Now, let's turn our attention to market news. Party time for global metals industry here in London, because it's LME week, the big annual gathering of everyone from traders to commodity journalists who have anything to do with the London Metal Exchange. It's about networking. It's about gauging the state of the market, negotiating multi-million tonne contracts. This amidst a spike in iron ore, gold prices edging up. Our commodities reporter Martin Ritchie joins us now for more. Martin, tell us what's going on then for London Metals Week right now. What are people going to be talking about this week in London?
It's a big week in the calendar for the metals business globally. You've really got literally thousands of people descending on London. This is a kind of big event where everyone gets together to talk about supply and demand across metals, what's happening in China, what's going to be happening next year. And it can have quite a kind of decisive influence on sentiment in the metals market for the sort of final end of the year. And as it happens, the timing it seems to be very good, because you've had this in China, this massive rollout of, or the Chinese government says this massive rollout of stimulus with the People's Bank and financial regulators unleashing, a battery of measures to support the economy. And that's really going to be a major talking point, certainly from a market point of view, in London this week. Are those measures enough to get metals prices moving again? Certainly is so far. Copper's back above 10,000 a tonne. Iron ore spiked by more than 10% this morning, quite dramatic. We've also got the annual negotiations in London for supplies of aluminium and copper ore start to get underway, and there's a lot of sort of minutiae of the metals market as well that gets discussed. And one of the stories we've put out already this week is about what's become known as warehouse games. It's about metals that sit in sheds around the world, and people can make a lot of money off the back of it. The story it was headlined, Mavericks of metals are back, rocking a $15 trillion market.
Talk to us a bit more about this controversy. Why are these fees so controversial?
Yeah, so one of the important aspects of the London Metal Exchange is that it depends on this massive network of warehouses. LME doesn't operate them. They're operated by third parties, but they are regulated by the LME. And this is where metal, ingots of aluminium, copper cathode, ingots of zinc can be stored by traders, or you can go there and buy metal and you can sell metal into the warehouse. And often you can have millions of tonnes sitting round about the world. What that means is that warehouse companies, the companies that own these warehouses, can have a tremendous influence on the operation of the market. They start to change the fees that are charged for metals coming and going to try and make sure they have as much metal as possible sitting in their warehouse.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.